to sign the sheet down here? Just right over here. There you got your pen, don't you? Okay, thank you. I can get this going anyway. There we go. Thank you. Lori, would you like to sign both places on this? Right here and right here. You're welcome. Those were from last year. Have to refresh my memory.
Thank you.
John, can I go ahead and get you to sign
Sure,
this?
sure.
Right here. Thank you. You know if Ryan's coming tonight?
I hadn't heard.
Okay. Kevin's supposed to be here. Didn't Kevin call us? The board?
Who can have all our board members?
No, absolutely. Thank you, though. Yeah, I understand.
Hello. Good, how are you doing?
How you doing? Hi, how are you? You're an attorney, right? You work at a law firm? Which one?
Pageant Law. It's based in Florida. I work from home.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all we do is foreclosure. So I cover the southern part of the state if I have to go to court, and we have two attorneys in Indianapolis that cover the northern part of the state.
Are you busy right now?
Yeah. Yeah,
Is it picking up?
surprisingly.
Is it picking up then, or?
To me, it seems to be,
I flip houses, so I
consistent.
always follow.
That's what my husband does.
it seems to be like higher than it had been, but consistently higher. Like it's not
Yeah.
going up, but it's been consistently high. Yeah. We saw a big influx at my prior firm at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was definitely picking up. But you know, a lot of them are divorces, deceased people, you know, really just situations that, you know, not anything.
Just odd situations
Yeah,
that can
there's
happen.
not a lot that just, people just can't afford it anymore. There's usually some underlying reason.
I'm scared. I'm scared.
Yeah, I mean, that may change.
I said, I'm really scared right now for the young people because
Oh, yeah.
I really am. Because there's just been a lot of you. I live in an area where we make a lot of USD loans, right?
Yeah,
You know, and I've just seen a lot of them that I think just very little continue. And it's like, that's not what we need right now.
yeah, yeah.
So it scares me a little bit. You know, if they keep their heads on straight, I mean, we've all been through that.
Yeah.
Over the years, we've all been in times where it's touch and go.
Yeah.
If we could, you know.
And lenders would
raise
much
the
rather
kids.
work with you and you keep it than them have to foreclose. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it doesn't work out.
But you know, when I was raising my kids, I was $1,000 cell phones. My car payments were just, I mean, it's
Yeah,
just like
everything.
everything right now. It's just everything. So I said, these young kids, if they keep their butts on straight,
Yeah,
they'll make it through.
yeah. I know, it's just, like, things have gone up exponentially, except our salaries,
Exactly. That's true.
as it
Yeah.
normally does, so,
Salaries have not kept up with
No. no.
housing prices.
No, it hasn't.
Not even close.
I don't even remember the last time we had a BCA meeting. Was it last?
It's
That'd
been
been
a
last
long
year.
time.
It was
Oh, it was
August
last
of last year.
Is it?
Have you read your minutes?
Yeah.
That's why I said I've really got to pay attention to this.
You may want to read your minutes because we're going to have to approve them
Yeah.
first thing.
Okay, I remember that one.
Everything going okay your way? You were able to start working again?
We cannot get my back straight. We cannot get my gut straight. We can't get into the last surgery. Apparently, from the pain in my leg and my back, there's probably something on the nerve.
Where they gonna go? vicinity anymore. That's why I'm outside.
I have my cataracts.
We have 2 sets of minutes to.
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Continue to have to-
Okay.
Remember, I'm now at 275 now, which is
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
What was the one happening?
well, we had cloudy lenses between 2017. I was told then that I needed cataract surgery. I would like to see.
Yeah, I can see that. You seem like a busy lady.
Oh, come on, I took care of mom for 11 years, but didn't really think anything about it. And Stephen would go, why do you turn every light on in this house?
Because I can't see.
It was just, but that's the only difference that I saw was that now, I was always just nursing 1.25, varsity 1.25, but now I got these things. You don't
I just said, well, my second brain surgery was in January. Last week I went for my third follow. Since I hadn't made my tumor go down, the pressure in my head was getting calmed down. And now I have permanent nerve damage on the optic nerve. And I have permanent vision loss on my left. But they don't know what's wrong.
Mine too. Yes, ma'am.
then you've got to
I need a second opinion, they said.
I'm going to go back. See, I worked with Dr. Brooke. I worked with John King. A limb fell on Stephen, but February 28th. I should have it because it's. I've got to show this to you. We're not going anywhere yet, are
No, you're good.
we? Where is this? My phone decided to do something different.
You just put your eyes on it.
What do we have? 6
That's why I don't remember it.
I've never had to
what's that?
do this.
Got to look, I was like, I don't even know.
This thing landed on the back of
I'm like
Stephen's
trying to rack my brain with this.
With,
That wasn't that
It's
long
hard to
ago.
remember, it was months.
28th.
Yeah.
It happened on the
Those
28th.
April ones was over a year ago.
yeah, it was. wasn't it?
He's Mr. Tidy. And he had to clean up some different things because the county had taken down 2 ash trees. They even pulled them away. But there was some bark down there, you know, the ash tree bark.
Maybe you like
Well, you know where I live. There's no yard down there, it's the road.
Yeah.
I was up at Pumi that day and I didn't go out with him because he wasn't running a chainsaw and he wasn't
Yeah.
climbing up on the tractor. He was just loader bucket, hauling loader bucket. All of a sudden I get this, Denise, I'm hurt.
No, that's a 911. That's not unheard. That's a 911.
When did you get on the plane?
That is called, remember, I have been in
Are you,
EMS.
are you on the plane?
I'm evaluating
How
him,
long have you
going,
been on
by
it?
the time the ambulance gets there, and I'm evaluating
That's a
him.
DCA.
But since his stroke and his little stroke and his brain bleed,
Yeah.
he has a tendency to be a
I didn't
misfire.
realize that.
Yeah.
Why?
He has a tendency to pair the same sentence if he wants something taken care of right now. Life is interesting.
You're still busy, is what you're saying?
Time flies.
So I go, okay, this is like evaluating
thinking that.
drug and injury.
Just
I'm
kind of
looking at the
reminiscing of
people's,
took my mom, she didn't turn
Lincoln
93 this year, so I took her,
This-
took her up to an
this
area where some family and her friends
was
used to
not
live, was going through
6
stuff.
little sutures because I looked at it and I went, we gotta move and he's got here. He thinks that's all that he has. His root is full of blood. I got new blood, old blood. He did tell me that he had been knocked out. We don't know how long. Never mind. I said, okay. I said,
I hit a
Stephen,
wall.
I'm taking you to the ER. And he just parrot, I have to go get the tractor. Yeah.
2 years
Down
ago,
by the road, somebody will take it.
Yes, but I said, Stephen, you know I know how to drive the tractor. I'm bringing it up here. I'm not putting it in the barn.
wouldn't want to
I'm
be-
ready. Yes, I said, you've got a head injury. You're putting in some sutures. I said, I'll get you down there. And I'm
I
going,
wouldn't want to even be there for the midterm.
you could put 3 fingers into a flat wound. When the nurse pulled that out, I'm glad I didn't pick up right. You know, he had a skin place. I knew it. He didn't get a drip or this one. He kept talking about the tree line because I'm driving it through there. Leaving. I didn't see the tree line. Later, I go,
You got any flips you're working on right now?
No, the last sold one, the last one I
there's
sold
always
was.
comedy. You
There
never.
has to be.
There has to be.
Or like it was so depressing.
Was that 2-story?
What did he
Dundee
was a
filled up
bit
your road?
obnoxious in the
That
ER.
was before that.
And the doctor did say to
Oh,
me,
it was-
turn around and he goes,
That's like where I live, it was on East Honeyland Road.
Well, okay.
That's a good one. I like the doctor.
went to the sheriff's sale
But when we got home, when we got home, when we got home, this is what he
I
did.
stopped bidding
Yeah.
200.
I mean, 11 staples. And he
And it
swallowed.
was a nice
Well,
place.
he's not
and I
happy.
didn't.
Oh, he doesn't look pleased.
What's his name beat me up.
And he
was on
goes,
it. If you're bidding some of the
Oh,
things
yeah.
that you can't.
And I said,
can't
"See,
do it.
ironically, today's the first day of Ramadan."
He looks like one of the Who's from Whoville. Because his hair is so Is he doing okay?
Nice house.
The thing about it is when you have that kind of a head injury,
3 acres.
initially,
It takes a while.
Garage, 2-story.
yeah, and he is such a misfire anyway.
He was able to get into the house.
But I had several people tell me,
Because the people were
keep an eye on him. This is what, 2 months
always
now.
trying to sneak in.
Because
My husband.
that initial seeds, brain doesn't share things.
Yeah. It comes later.
Okay, so,
And,
and they're still rated, but they don't do it. At that time, the only reason they were doing it was to keep
It'll come later.
busy during the day. They would like get one in the
Yeah.
He's like,
And so
oh,
they most of them.
the other day he was standing up. And I thought, okay.
Carrier roofing.
So, anyway, he had some kind of tool that he could.
just to keep you on your toes.
Isn't marriage interesting?
It's some.
Usually.
Yeah.
My advice to everyone that's getting married is just think just think of it. It's forever. You don't know.
Because you can get it just in there right,
I,
and of course, I have them in the old houses that we lived in. People lock themselves out or something, or drop the key down in the deck and
And then you're like, I can't.
Sometimes I sat there and tried to, figure out the lock code and try to add this and it's like a real or so. Sometimes they just use
Yeah.
the proper
It's part of the, it's
what are
just.
you going to do?
sometimes they do.
you know, try
How you
that.
doing, Marcia? I'm good, Lisa. How are you? Well, I had a call today, so I left a message. Hopefully they'll get me back in to reevaluate to see. And then my neurologist,
Yeah, so I don't know, there hasn't been much.
if they can reduce
Yeah, I think so. We
neuroscience.
could start off.
I don't
Now they're gonna send me to
I'll just wait for her to get done and then I'll start it.
Goodman and
Since she's gotta
they used to
take
be
the
connected
notes.
to IU neurosurgery and then they split. I wouldn't know, split.
We have this house, this was at my prior firm, which did foreclosures also. It was up in Indianapolis. It was a $1.2 million home, and I'm like, why is this my foreclosure? You just don't see those in
Not
foreclosure.
really, yeah.
I looked into it, and there was a plastic surgeon that had lost his license because he had so many malpractice claims against him.
They said there's
And
no
apparently his
practice
wife was a doctor too, but I'm not really
But
sure what kind.
there's, it's
She was trying to keep the house, and I think he was just gone. Like, we don't know the house. And it got scheduled for sale twice, but she always did something in town, like,
so I've never had.
get a loan modification packet in or something, and then they have to stop it. So I don't know if it ever actually went to sale or not. I'm like,
The science is that we like that we don't.
You're talking about, they just left and, he was just gone.
yeah.
4 years ago, I worked at court for Judge Bennett.
Oh, okay.
I worked for him for 25 years. We had this
That's what they said.
psychiatrist from my mother's twin sister here and to testify on a case. Then we heard about a year later that he was like temporarily suspended, like lost his license for a while. Well, he had an attorney come in and she didn't believe us. I seen him as a security guard down in Dillard's. And he was working as a security guard in Dillard's, waiting to get his license back. I'll never forget that because I was like, man, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, like what would, like, it's not like he's a surgeon and you hurt somebody, or like, how do you lose your, I guess, disclosing information?
Yeah, well,
A
probably.
relation,
It could have been a Medicare fraud type of thing, or I probably knew it.
Can I get you all to step out and I'll administer you to your oath? I know you didn't want to put the plan commission, but since you're on the BZA, let's step out real quick in the hallway and just take care of it.
Somebody scared him into getting the 2 pneumonia ones instantly. Every side effect. Every side effect.
It's scary.
He died of pneumonia. Oh my gosh, you can't make it. I could write a book on this. And my mother would go, that killed Charles, those killed Charles. I said, no, I've got to stop sleeping.
Okay. I work
Yep.
That's crazy.
Everyone in the family in that gene pool that's been vaccinated is the same. The lib.
Just us.
Yeah. Oh, it's not related.
And it goes back, yeah. And when I go to my doctors and they ask, I'm always like, I don't have it. They're like, do you want it? I'm like, no.
When I went in for my cataract surgery, there were 2 older women in there, and they were talking about this and that and the other. And I loved to do it just to see what people would do. They just flu shot like whatever and like whatever. And some of this is the thing, I've never had any vaccinations at all. You've never seen
Yeah.
2 terrified people.
We were like, riot. They were like,
I thought it was hilarious because actually you're the scary one because your stuff sheds and when I breathe it. Oh, you can't even make any sense anymore.
when they told me the other day that they didn't know, which I was like, it's a good thing close enough. I've been up here for 5 years and I've had 2 surgeries, and now you don't know. It's like, that doesn't make me feel any better. It might make you feel better, but it doesn't make me feel better.
Advanced now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
haven't done squats.
I'm not worried about it, I promise. All right, well, sit back here. I'm going to start this other one.
Let us know when you're ready, Lisa.
Oh, it's Todd, you gonna sit down there?
What's that?
You gonna sit down there?
Yeah, but I'm gonna say way back here. You go ahead.
I'm also way back here. Just Lori doesn't take it.
She has to watch the screen.
John.
Ready? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and call our BZA meeting to order. And our first order of business is to review and approve the meeting minutes of 2 previous meetings. So, has everybody had a chance to read the minutes from the two meetings?
Yep.
All right, then I'm going to call for a motion to approve the minutes.
One correction on the April 9th minutes, my name is spelled incorrectly. It's M-A-R-S-H-A, not C-I-A, in that first paragraph.
That was an old one, I should have caught.
Yeah, my last name's wrong too.
Is it?
Yeah.
Take the C
Take the
out.
C out. Yeah.
Okay.
That's on both of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, other than those changes, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes of both meetings.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Okay, Marcia made a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Denise, second. All in favor, say aye and raise your right hand.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. And we are going to do our annual reorganization meeting to nominate president and vice president of the BZA. I don't mind doing it again. If someone else wants to do it, that's fine too.
So we need a nomination.
Yeah, we need a nomination. If you want it, I mean. Okay.
I nominate John
You're
to go
already-
ahead and stay in as president for the
All right.
next term.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it again.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor of me being the president of the BZA, raise your right hand and say yay.
Aye.
Aye, I mean aye. Okay, that passes, and we need to elect a vice president. And that's you, you were vice president, weren't you?
Yeah.
Lori, okay. You want to continue?
I can.
I'll make a motion for Lori to be the vice president.
I'll second it.
And we have a second. And all in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, and that, I believe, is everything we need to do today for the BZA, so I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Marcia made a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Lori second. All in favor, say aye, raise your right hand.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are adjourned. That was easy.
Good job.
You leave it?
Do we need to, I guess we need to sign these
A sign in?
We do need to sign the meeting minutes,
Meeting
one
minutes.
copy of each.
All right,
Did you
I'll
make the
start
correction?
one. Let's see. I'm just gonna put an
Yeah, I was
X.
gonna say, just change your name on both of them,
Put
and
an
then
X.
her name is Marsha. I can't see that far.
Okay.
And Lori, will you pass this down to Marcia so she can sign in both places, please?
I think her name's right on the other one.
Okay, all right, just that.
I think
one.
it was just the first one. on the other one.
Sign this one.
Yep. There's that one.
Can you sign that yet?
Yeah, I got that. Or did I? Yeah, that's in the place. All right.
Put those down to the.
Yeah.
There's nothing in. It's already, I already signed that earlier, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. It is, isn't it?
Yeah, the at symbol, Washington County, Indiana.
Okay.
No.com.
So it's actually on YouTube?
I didn't, I mean, I knew it was, but I didn't know it was a channel.
Well, who's video?
Well, I
Is
just
it?
did. I know, the
Oh,
news
you're-
broadcast.
Yeah, you're the one that was on
I'm
there.
just kidding. I just learned how to do it like today. So if there's any hiccups in it today, it's my first time. So.
Okay.
Bill will tell me. Yeah, Kyra's been doing it on Kyra's. And I think other, like meetings have, they got set at the beginning of the year, so we have.
I know I looked at it. I'm not involved in
If you
YouTube.
just search Washington County, there's, it's the at symbol Washington County.
Okay. Okay.
I had to ask.
My husband was like, I want to camp and watch Pacers.
How you doing, Marcia?
I'm doing all right, Todd. How are you?
Good.
Marcia, do you have the signed, well Denise had them last, I think.
Yeah, she was the last one to sign.
She's in the audience.
She's sitting right there.
They're not these. My glasses.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Denise was sitting here, and I was going to sit back in the audience.
I don't have a particular favorite seat. Probably where I'd rather be.
Thank you.
No. I'll see you later.
See ya.
There's your agenda, okay?
What? So like innocent license?
Did these are the plan commission, I wanted to make sure the ones that you have in there are not BZA.
Okay.
So, let's see here, you've got the 7th and the 23rd for the plan commission, that might be what you have there, but we also distributed BZA ones, you're welcome to read those.
I said, I think it would be okay.
So I don't know, that's.
I said, this time we'll let it slide, but the next one I know.
And I forget.
I have a story for you. Well, it's in
Logan Davis. VID.
Yes.
Okay, to sign in here.
Yes.
Totally lose.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't at the last meeting because that's when my husband was having his gallbladder surgery.
He was having his what?
Gallbladder surgery.
Oh, did you do okay?
Yeah.
The best thing that ever happened to me when I had
Yeah,
it out.
he has felt a lot better. It's been 18
No,
months.
I just didn't know who was on the planning
Ridiculous
commission.
stomach problems, because last year when he had his ultrasound, the GI doctor then said, he's got some sludge in there, but there's no reason to take it out. By the time he went, he had 30 gallstones in there, and he was just miserable. So we were very grateful to get it out.
Nice to meet you.
Much better. Yeah, he's really
I had 2 attacks. After that second one, I was like, done. Take it out. But the doctor I was going to at the time kept telling me, you can control it with your diet. And so finally, I just kind of like went over his head and found a surgeon.
Yeah,
I went and talked to him. He goes, who told you?
yeah,
And I said, my doctor, and he goes, your diet has nothing to do with when those gallstones get lodged. Because mine kept getting lodged.
there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, that's, yeah, it was finally his general, his primary care doctor.
Right before COVID hit,
Oh, God.
and I was and I had done it, what was it like? COVID
Okay.
came out.
What's the latest?
Well, like
March.
February, March.
Yes.
I had, that's when my second attack was, and I said, I went to the surgeon, I said, Scabs, I can't, because they're so bad.
Yeah.
They're worse than childbirth. I mean, they are so bad.
Yeah, he would be miserable.
Yeah.
Not a big crowd.
And then COVID hit, and I said, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
had to waste months.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't do it if it wasn't,
Right.
if it was elected. Or,
Yeah.
elected? Elected.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was so glad I seen that.
Yeah, he's been pretty relieved.
Yeah, I only waited about maybe 4 months. 4 months to attack it. Done.
I told Joel, I said,
I don't
"Yeah,
have
you didn't
much,
realize that you
well, I
were
don't have much resilience.
I think he wishes he would have went sooner, but the only reason he didn't, the only reason he went is because I got tired of listening to him, and I said, I'm just gonna call and make you an appointment. So I did, I made an appointment with his primary care
Say
doctor.
something like that.
I know.
And it was so easy once I got through it. I was like,
Why didn't I do this? Yeah.
what was I worried about?
Yeah.
So I'm sure he felt the same way.
I'm Emily.
Nice
I
to
walked
meet you.
past but I forgot to
Yeah,
introduce myself.
yeah.
I'm
I went to.
Slide
I think I
Guy.
went to
You
school
too.
with your. Yeah.
Yes.
How's he been?
Well, we're married, so it depends on the day, but he's
Right.
alright, I guess.
Right.
I'm not gonna, you know. Who are you laughing at?
Poor guy.
No, no. We've been together a very long time. That poor man. It'll be 15 years this December.
Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
feel sorry for him.
Andrew, I am so nice to you, it hurts. No, he's all right. He drives us in.
Roses, the thorn between the roses, he
Leaves
was
early
really
and
good.
goes late.
I'm
So
the
Monday through
thorn.
Friday, I don't really
That'd
see
be
him.
nice to you.
I know.
Yeah, so it's just me and the dog, so I get along just fine, really.
Welcome back.
Wait, where's he
We've
from?
been hiding that.
He works for 4R Solutions.
I've been in public.
Okay.
So he's
Yeah, I
really
know,
just, they call it local, but he's in like the 3 states,
Your
but
bunch all doing okay?
Is your truck?
yeah.
Far as I know.
So he leaves at like 5 a.m.
Today.
and he gets home.
Mr. Baird,
Yes,
Oh, geez.
be glad to.
He says he
I'll
likes.
leave us some.
Got it.
okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We're gonna have a pledge of allegiance and then a prayer. Please stand. Flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Gracious Father in heaven, we just thank you for this day. Father, another day that we could worship you. And I thank you for the creation that you have for us. Help us, Lord, to take care of it. Lord, I pray that you would just be in this meeting tonight, that you would give us all wisdom in our words, our comments, anything that we do and say here, may it be glorifying to you. Father, if we know that one day I'll stand before you, we will all stand before you. And Lord, help us to praise and worship you while we're on this earth. Thank you again for all that you do and for your Son that came and gave us hope of another day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you.
This is your purpose, no, you're fine. You can keep
All right. Before we approve the minutes of the previous meeting, I would like to welcome our newest board member, Logan Davidson, and very happy to have him fill that vacancy. And welcome, and do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah. So I feel I definitely thank you for the opportunity, but I had a message that I have today that I wanted to share. I cannot, in good conscience, belong to an organization that shows such ruthless disregard for the twin principles of true conservatism: fiscal responsibility and small government. Additionally, the right to one's property, the sacred right to do with it as one pleases, so long as it doesn't encroach upon a neighbor, is a bedrock of our nation. I originally contemplated joining the commission under the misguided belief that I could fight from within to resist the kind of guerrilla politics we saw on full display today, and to help stymie government overreach like the latest attempted ordinance. But I found it laughable that you were perfectly fine handing out heavy-handed fines against poor people royal folks for things like old cars, yet shrugged off pollution of residential property in the name of knowing the risk of building in an agricultural zone. I found it absurd that you spent time worrying about regulating adult entertainment industry that doesn't even exist here and won't, given the realities of a small rural county and the free market, the internet. I found it infuriating that you sought to regulate local businesses and the local food movement when many of my friends are Amish. Many of my friends are Amish. And I myself own a local food business. This isn't conservatism, it's government overreach. And I'm also concerned about solar farms. But I'm also concerned that if I have my own property, I should be able to do with it what I please. In my opinion, the Planning Commission should be disbanded altogether. We need to return to common sense government where people are trusted to manage their own property and lives without unnecessary interference. Hopefully we can achieve that through the democratic process. So that is my statement.
So could you repeat the first line of your original statement? I'm a little confused.
First line is that I swore in 5 minutes ago before this meeting started, and I'm officially resigning now.
Okay, that's what I thought
Okay.
you said. So, thank you. All right. Everyone, I assume, has had time to review the meeting minutes of the last meeting, which was January 7th. And the special meeting for January 23rd, they're all in front of you. If you'd like to take a couple minutes to review those. And then I'll ask for a motion to approve. All right, if there are no corrections to the minutes, could I have a motion to approve the January 7th and the January 23rd minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Danielle, seconded by Kevin. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to jump back into the document with all the public comment, good, bad, or otherwise. I think it's been a learning experience for all of us. And I think we're ready to look at things maybe in a little bit different manner. Things like this tend to do that. But we do have a job to do. We do have some very important aspects of this document that need to be addressed. And one of the most important ones, and which should be a fairly straightforward and should be a very valuable document as far as how it affects the people of Washington County, is the subdivision ordinance, because many people on both sides of this issue have stated repeatedly that they certainly didn't see much problem at all with this document the way it's written now. And we have made some minor changes, and at this time I'll call Connor Barnett forward to go over the finer points of the document. And once again, I want to reiterate, contrary to what some think, this is a far cry from government overreach. This is simply to protect everyone from, in this case, developers. In the past, developers have taken advantage of a lot of people in this county, and I've seen it over the past 40 years. And we do need some rules regarding this, and I think this is a really good start. I want to thank you, Connor, for coming in this evening.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's good to see you guys all again. As Todd said, we've been working on this for quite some time now on some of these amendments and ordinance changes. So after discussion and some of the community comment, we've decided to pull the subdivision control from the rest of the zoning document. I believe all of you guys have received a copy of that, and I hope we've got a chance to review it. I know we've talked about this a lot over the last handful of months, and the public's obviously got a chance to review the subdivision control side of things. I think it'd be a good idea to maybe do a brief overview, answer some questions tonight, and then I think it would be wise to publish this for the public's review and comment and question. Possibly assign someone to answer some questions that surround this. I think a lot of them have already been answered after the last review, but just kind of want to see what you guys want to do moving forward, what the process needs to be. We can answer any questions, hit on any notes, anything you guys have tonight. Just give me some guidance on how we want to handle it, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm fine with what Connor suggested. Is this might go around the room here, and you know, if this takes a month or more, then so be it. We want to make sure that everyone is heard. Not everyone will get what they want, but you know, there's no way to please everyone. But I think, generally speaking, that we can come up with a document for the subdivision that will be very fair and falls in line with what many of the other counties have had for many, many years. Anybody have any comments about how we need to proceed when we go through it? I do agree that we need to post it on our county website, give everyone an opportunity to look at it, take questions, and whatever it takes, make sure everyone's heard.
Yeah, Todd, we can just give a brief overview, so for anyone sitting in the public.
And before we start, not to interrupt you, Connor.
Yeah.
In these folders in front of Todd, there are copies for the planning commission that I've printed out. I'll pass them out before we get started.
The revised, you mean?
Yeah, it's what Connor, this last draft.
Oh, okay.
It's not a document, it's just a draft. But I put these together so everybody, as Connor went through it, would have something to look at on the commission.
Yeah, while Emily's passing that out, I think we
And
can
there's
just give
page
a
numbers at the top, because we
brief
run into that during
overview
our
of
meetings in the past.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
what a subdivision control ordinance is. So I think when some people hear subdivision, they're thinking mass subdivisions, 20, 30 lots. This would apply to any subdivision of property in the county. You know, if I splitting an acre out of a 5-acre farm, it would still fall under the subdivision control ordinance. And it would be broken down into 3 levels. So administrative review would just be reviewed by whoever the planning commission designates that to be, whether it be the building commissioner or the surveyor. That would be up to 5 splits from a piece of property, no less than whatever we decide. I know there's been some conversation there, whether that's 1 acre or 2 acre minimum, and then a frontage requirement that we need to kind of hash out tonight on how you guys want to move forward on that. But up to 5 parcels out of the parent parcel being subdivided. No, if it's over 10 acres, it would be exempt from that, so it would not account against your 5 parcel split. Those are going to be reviewed by that representative appointed by the planning commission. So again, whether that's Travis or Emily, if a survey's completed, the split ground, it would come before their office. They would review it, make sure that it meets the plating standards that you guys are adopting per this ordinance, before it's recorded downstairs and that transfer of property can take place. And then minor subdivision would be between 5 and 8 splits from a tract. Those can include access easements. There's also some regulation on when those are and are not allowed. And then minor subdivision would be what you're thinking of as far as a major development. You know, those multiple lot, 10, 12, 20 lot subdivisions with streets and sewage extension potentially, where you're looking at some bigger infrastructure. So this ordinance is 12 pages, 14 total, 12 that kind of break down what the requirements are for the approval of those subdivisions, and the last 2 pages are your notations that'll be on the plat for adoption and signature blocks. So I think it's important to discuss some of the issues and why I think it was important that you know, we've had these discussions and brought this to the table for adoption. In the past, there has been, until recently, no subdivision control, and then you guys have adopted some standards, I believe, over the last couple of years. But what we're seeing a lot of in Washington County is 6, 7, 8 parcels split off of 1 access easement, which is just a recipe for disaster. When you've got multiple homes being accessed by 1 easement, sometimes that works when it's all family. That's what we hear a lot of. But over the years, that becomes strangers. Somebody moves away, somebody gets divorced, somebody passes away, whatever the case may be, and next thing you know, you've got 6, 7, 8 strangers living on a shared driveway that nobody wants to maintain. There's no maintenance agreement in place, and it just causes a lot of headache and issues for the property owners as well as the municipality on getting constant requests to maintain their road, which is just a private access easement. Another issue we see is multiple homes being built on a piece of property rather than being subdivided and each home being on its own parcel. There'll be 1, 2, 3 homes on a piece of property, and that's great until somebody forecloses on their mortgage or forecloses on their home, and then the rest of the 20-acre farm is tied to that mortgage. So again, I know we're putting some regulation in place. Obviously, some people are very unhappy with that, but this is to protect the public and make sure that some of these boxes are getting checked before issues like that happen. Daniel Bland's here, I think he's on the agenda to speak as well. He deals with it, and the surveyors in this community deal with it more than anybody, but they see some of the issues that arise from not having that subdivision control ordinance in place in this county all the time. When you have a piece of property surveyed and split it so you can build a home on it, it is surveyed, and the survey is required, well, then you actually know where your property lines are. I've heard multiple horror stories in this county of homes being built over a property line or completely on someone else's property, because they may think they know where that property line is via possession, but nobody's ever had that surveyed, and it turns out it was 45 feet west of where they thought it was. So those are some of the issues that we're trying to eliminate with this ordinance. Again, rather than go through it paragraph by paragraph tonight, I think it would be a good idea to spend a month, everybody really going through it. You guys all have my contact information. Ask me any questions, always prepared. Answer any questions the public has, and then maybe even have another discussion next month before setting it for public hearing. So with that, I'll answer any questions you guys have. If we want to dive into a certain section or chapter, I'm more than happy to do so. You just let me know how we want to proceed.
The only question I have is on the 13-5 on page 6, where basically that first paragraph, the last half of it was deleted.
So I carried that over from minor when I was preparing this. That was a mistake on my end, Todd. So this, a major subdivision would include public utilities as well as the extension of public roads. That's one of the things that makes it a major subdivision.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
So that was just an oopsie on your part, right?
sure was. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Apologize.
No, you're,
Exempt subdivisions would again just go through whoever you guys designate that to be. So building commissioner, county surveyor, that would be the administrative subdivision. Minor subdivisions would go before a plat committee, which is 3 to 5 people that you guys would appoint. Those do not require a public hearing per state statute, so everything in the subdivision control ordinance goes back to reference Indiana Code 36-7-4. It's the 700 series. Is what kind of outlines the regulations for subdivision control ordinances and gives the local municipality the power to adopt these. And then major subdivisions would actually come before the planning commission for a public hearing.
So I have a question. So you said the minor subdivision would need to go through a committee,
Plat committee, yes,
a
ma'am.
plat committee.
And that's appointed by the planning commission. Typically, what you see in municipalities is that the county surveyor will serve on that, the planning commissioner or building commissioner will serve as secretary, and then the highway superintendent would also serve on that.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be, that's just typically what you see.
Okay, so, okay.
Yeah, we had discussed that a couple of times and thought that made sense. 3 people, 3 key people, the building commissioner, the surveyor, and the county highway superintendent, since in many cases, subdivisions naturally coming off of a county road, there's lots of traffic and safety issues, and we felt it important, as is usually commonplace in most counties in this state, where the plat committee has included on that board the highway superintendent.
I'm gonna ask something. Well, me and Connor have been on the phone probably more times than he would like to admit, because I have read this document a lot in the past months. And I have questions about it. I've asked Connor every question that I could think of on it. We've talked about it. There's some changes that I would like to see made to the document, Connor, and we've talked about that as well. I'm gonna wait until we review it for a month before I bring it forward so everybody can look at it. I don't wanna just throw it out there without everybody looking at it first. But I would really, really hope that everyone on this board will read this document. I hope the public reads this document. This document would be so good for our county. Not just from my office standpoint, but from our neighbor's standpoint. There's a joke that you hear in our county, it's neighbors, or fences make good neighbors. And the fence doesn't make a good neighbor if you don't know where your property line is. Because you spend a lot of money on that fence, and you get it put up, and then you might get a survey, or your neighbor might get a survey, and that fence might cross the line. It might not, it might be totally on your neighbor. And I want people to know what they own. Because I don't want anyone to think that anyone's trying to take away what they own. And if we could start by surveying your property, if you're going to sell off part of it, it would give a lot of people peace of mind. And I just want people to read this document, and I want you to put effort into this. Because it means a lot to me that we get somewhere with this document.
What you're saying is by not having any rules causes you a lot of grief.
Not having, I don't want to say our county doesn't have any rules. We have some rules on the books. They're just not working for times that are happening now. And if we can help the public out by updating and making it better, I don't know why we wouldn't.
And it's not just Emily that's being hurt, it's the contractor like me that goes out to lay out a septic system. For instance, my dad gave me an acre and then I bought 5 more acres off of him. Well, they just did the administrative measured off stuff. Well,
Yeah.
last year I had to go move all 4 of my fences because the neighbor got a survey. They sewed part of it off. One's 15 foot and 2 foot and 4 foot, and you know, it's a major headache if we had just had it surveyed to begin with.
And I just want people, this board takes a lot of time and effort when we read these documents, and we do the best we can. I believe that we do the best that we can. There are good people on this board. And we're not trying to make rules that are restrictive. We're trying to make rules that are helpful. This document, I believe, will be helpful. I believe that. And if we've said this at meetings, and now that there's public here to listen, I want you all to listen. If we pass a document, we can always amend it. They're always made to be amended. But if we don't have a starting point, we can't amend anything. So I just want us to take it seriously. I want the public to take it seriously. If you have questions, ask. If you don't like something, just have a conversation. It's okay to talk. But this could be very helpful in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And I just want people to know that. It's not to be mean or take away anybody's rights. It's to help you with what you're supposed to own, so you know where you own, because you're going to put a lot of money into that property, and you would hope that it's on what you own. And I see it in my office. Dan's a licensed surveyor, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but he sees it every day. It's not just in Washington County, he sees it every day. And when people come in your office and they're so upset because they got a survey or their neighbor got a survey and they don't own what they always thought that they owned, it really is heartbreaking. So I just want us to really put in the effort on this, guys. If I could ask anything from you, I just want us to put in the effort. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very well put.
No, I think another important thing to mention that I forgot to touch on was as of right now in Washington County, you can just have a legal description prepared and recorded without having a survey performed at all. And, you know, when the license surveyor comes out, they're required by law to set boundary corners, property corners, create the description, create the plat. As of right now, you can have an attorney write a description and record it. Well, all it takes is, they haven't been out in the field, all it takes is one blown bearing in distance, and that property is on the opposite side of the road. And then it gets transferred, and someone thinks they know exactly where their 2 acres are at Emily's Point. They build a house, and what they own and have title to is on the other side of the road. So, I won't even say what they have title to, what they've been deeded, is on the opposite side of the road. So, I think this is really important. It's going to eliminate some of the nonsense with developers from out of this county coming into this county, which I know all of you have seen numerous times, and chopping a piece of property up as many times as they can in the quickest and cheapest way that they can, and then transferring those to landowners in Washington County that are going to build a house. And then that problem gets kicked down the road 10, 15 years until it becomes an issue, and that developer is long gone. So I really, truly believe this is in the best interest of your residents and protecting their land rights moving forward, so.
Okay.
Could I say something, Todd?
Yes.
I want to thank Emily for saying all that she did. Very well said, thank you.
Thanks.
I do not want to put you on the spot, but you know things and understand things that I don't because of your position and what you've dealt with. Are there things that some of those things you said you want to talk about later, is there something that you could, not necessarily page 5, letter E, all those things, but some general things that I should
there's
be
just
keeping in
some
my
stuff
mind as I read?
like for clarification, because I have read it so many times, like I've called Connor and I'm like, hey, I think we need to add some extra words in here because I read it the one time this way and then I put it down and 2 days later I picked it up. I think we need to put like extra words in here. Because when you read a list one way the first time, it looks one way. So like when you read it, put it down and then pick it up and read the same section again because you might think a different way as well. And then when I called Connor, he was like, oh, well, maybe that is that way. We'll talk about it and see what everybody else thinks at the meeting. So I don't want you guys to take what I have to say as the gospel. And then I talked to Connor again in the first draft that got posted online, and the public saw it and we saw it. When we did like building zoning, like how far from the property line, there was a picture in there and it kind of showed what it looked like. Well, when we talk about these subdivisions, and I talked to Connor if he could do it and if we wanted him to, if we could kind of show a visual of like, we're saying you can like 4 or 5 splits and then a 10 acre, and when you say that out loud, can we see like an example of what that would look like and with the driveway and then if you have like your building requirements coming out of those, like what would that look like? And so, not that everybody's would have to look the same, but as an example, like can we see this on the administrative plat? Can we see like a drawing of an example of a minor or of a major? The minor and the major, that would be more for developer sides of things. Or like, but like an administrative, that's what most people, citizens in Washington County, that's mostly what we see in my office. So when it gets higher than that, I don't have a lot of knowledge in that. It just hits me afterwards. And I talked to Connor about that. I also don't know Indiana code. I don't just read that for fun, I'll admit. So when Connor put this in here, here's when I say I've read it forwards and back, this is what mine looks like. I printed out the code on Indiana code and I've read it because it references Indiana code, but I didn't know what it was. So I printed it out. I printed it out when he said the 700 series. I didn't know what that was, so I printed it out so I could read it while I was reading this document every single time. I printed out just extra things. There's a thing in here that talks about different attorneys. I'm like, is it that attorney or should it be our planning commission attorney? Where do we go there? Just questions like that. Things like we kind of did when we were going through the draft of the other one. Just what do I think makes the most sense when we look at it, kind of.
Yeah, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we were really changing anything.
When we did it, we said we would bring it up at the meeting.
Just some points of clarification,
Yeah.
making sure that when someone's reading that, it's as clear as possible.
And then whenever it's time for everyone to look at it, I don't want to jump ahead of anyone. I want everyone to look at it. And we go through it. We can talk about it at the same time.
And I just want to clarify too, so this document that we have right here is just for us right now. We're going to talk about it we're gonna review it, talk about it, make changes, and then the changed amended document would be what potentially could be put out for public comment.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I don't know that there's a real reason to put it out right now. If you guys have amendments to make, like, let's go ahead and get those knocked out, because I'm sure some of the concerns or amendments and questions that you guys have are the same ones the public's gonna have. Let's hash those out over the next 30 days, bring it back here, have that discussion, and then set it for public hearing the following month, and then give that 30 days of it being posted on the website. Again, I think it would make sense for someone to have a copy of that and be the point person in this county, that anybody that has a question can come and ask and talk through. Obviously, you guys know that you can contact me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can with answers. So that's what I would recommend moving forward.
In public hearing, just as clarification for everyone, because we didn't make it past that point, that doesn't make it law. The public hearing, you're just moving it from our board to the next board.
Yeah, and that can be
That's-
continued as well. So,
yeah,
like,
we could
bring
move it
to
on.
Public hearing, and there's a lot
I know
of
we didn't get to
discussion.
that point, but that,
We just table it, and then we make any amendments that the public brings up, and we bring it back to this board for a public hearing. And then, whenever
Do it again.
everything's shored up and you guys feel comfortable sending it to the commissioners, is when we will do so. And that's if the commissioners adopt it. I believe it takes 2 hearings. Lisa, am I correct on that? That's when it'll be approved and finalized, if it gets to that point. So, yeah, that's what I would recommend moving forward.
I just didn't want there to be expectation that this document was gonna be on our website. And
Yeah.
people were looking for it, because I agree, I think after hearing Emily, everyone is going to want to be more actively involved, so.
totally appreciate it as well.
And I guess the only other thing that I have, and this may be something for next time, that when we were discussing the full document in the past, one thing that was brought to my attention, and I have some connection to this with my own family and even myself, it was brought to my attention several times that, there may not be something in here about creating a home for a special needs child or an aging parent or anything like that. I believe that we all had considered that before and had thought about those things and have a lot of compassion, and we know we're all going to potentially be at that point sometime in our own lives. I just want to make sure we have something in here to kind of put that at ease as to there's something there that, whether that means, I just would like to see it, some words that share that we understand that we're not trying to keep people from taking care of their family, what that might be.
Yeah, absolutely, and unfortunately, we never had a public hearing to hear some of
Exactly.
those and explain it,
Exactly.
but I know that was discussed, and it's something that, it was just missed. Obviously, it wasn't the intent to keep people
No.
from doing that, so, not having a zoning ordinance go along with subdivision control ordinance creates some challenges in that, because that's typically where that would be addressed. I know you guys currently have some zoning, it may be worth amending the current zoning ordinance or creating a ordinance. I don't know that outlining some of that in the subdivision control ordinance is appropriate, but you can also vary from the subdivision control ordinance, just like you can the zoning ordinance. So, potentially having to go through the variance process, even though that's not ideal, and that's not our intent without that zoning ordinance to go along with it, that might just be best case scenario. Because we were going to address that in the zoning ordinance via hardship with some rules and regulations outlined, because that's not, again, the intent of the ordinance to keep people from caring for their loved ones.
Kind of what the commissioners had did in the past, when somebody had a disabled parent or something, they would suspend the septic system rules and allow them to hook into the existing system, as long as it didn't create a problem, and everybody just had a piece of paper that said when he passed, it all got unhooked.
Sure.
So,
Yeah,
something like that would be helpful.
Yeah, there's a few ways that you guys can address that, but I definitely think it's worth talking about and mentioning. Just have to figure out the best way to move forward.
Probably the subdivision ordinance is not the place probably to put it.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
No, maybe an amendment to the current, I know the zoning standards currently aren't
Okay,
super involved, but I think adding something to those may not be a bad idea.
but we can address it, yeah.
I just wanted it to be discussed in a public meeting that
Wasn't our intention.
was not an intent, something that was intended. It was
Yeah.
because of the nature of the way things happened.
Sure.
that we can't address it specifically here.
Okay.
Thank you.
And kind of on that same note, I'd love the board to take another look at this 2-acre minimum. That's, you know, if you look at our draft that we just got back, we're gonna lose 1,000 residents by 2050. So we need to do everything we can to promote as much growth and development, because we're gonna lose our tax base, our taxes will increase. So it's just something I'd love for everybody to just take a little closer look at, because we did 3/4 of an acre for the last 50 years, and now all of a sudden you're gonna tell everybody, you gotta have 2 acres. Well, that's hard for a lot of people to do, to maintain, to pay taxes, you know, when you're first starting out or when you're retiring, so just something you might take a little closer look at.
Can that minimum acreage requirement be in the subdivision ordinance?
Yeah. Admin.
I had that wrote down from the concerns that we heard throughout the public. I wrote that down in this one, that it was a concern to take it back down to a 1 acre instead of a 2 acre. If that's what we chose to do in our subdivision control ordinance.
I'd like to have just a short discussion on that, because that was a very hot topic. Apparently it affected more people than certainly what I thought. I wouldn't have thought an acre, 2 acre mattered, but
I think we should start by explaining, since we do have some ears here, how we got to the 2 acres. We didn't just sit here and we're like, 2 acres sounds good. There was discussion had about 2 acres.
several times. It was even, 5 was even mentioned.
I've got some minutes here if you want me to read it. Basically, what was told that night was Lori brought up some concerns about elderly people. We discussed it a little bit, and then basically Todd said something about Urban Day and said that 2 acres was easier to sell than any other acreage, and that's kind of what we based our vote on that night.
I believe I remember it a little differently. I also shared that, the idea that Washington County is a very agricultural county, and our comprehensive plan shared.
And they came to our meeting.
Wanted to maintain the agricultural nature of our county, that was one way we could do it, to maintain that, is by changing that minimum lot size. And so that was one thing that I took into consideration.
And that's where my consideration came from.
And I think I've even shared before that I have a friend in Iowa that their minimum, they allow 1 home per section of land, and it's a minimum of a 40-acre lot size for that 1 home. And that really tells me what they value in that county was agriculture. And so, in my opinion, I was thinking, obviously I would never make that recommendation, but I was thinking it as a plan commission member who is trying to preserve the agricultural nature of the county. That was one way I was willing to do it. Wasn't considering 5, but didn't necessarily think 1 was going to meet my expectation. So that was also
Kind of my thought is, if you've got a minimum lot size, you don't have to get out into the agricultural. There's a lot of little niches all over this county that people could be building on rather than being out in that agricultural
such
recreation.
as a subdivision. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that there was a comprehensive plan. The county took information, there were surveys done, people in the public took notice of this.
Hundreds and hundreds and
The
hundreds.
company, I forget their name now, came to one of our meetings to give us an update. One of the main concerns of our county was to keep it rural, which people didn't want to see houses everywhere. In order to not see houses everywhere, you can't have houses everywhere. So if we have bigger lot sizes, not even lot sizes, because in my office, a lot size is a subdivision, so a parcel size, if you have a smaller parcel size, you can put more homes. So if we made it a 2 acre minimum, I think Brown County was like 3 or 4 or 5 acres. We talked about that at one of our meetings. If we went to 2 acres, we could see how that would go, and if there was a bunch of, if we had backlash or if it wasn't working the way we thought it would, we could amend it and make it to 1 and see how that went. And then at the public hearing, we would see how the public took it, and if they didn't like 2 acres, we would then take into consideration, reconvene, we would re-meet, hey, the 2 acres didn't go over well, we can cut it back. That was my interpretation and
My
I could be wrong.
apologies for using lot size
You're good.
instead of parcel.
You're good. Nope, no hard feelings, but
Can-
I just wanted to explain how we started it too. But that we all knew that one would kind of be a major consensus at the end.
We did have a lot of conversation on this, and every municipality is a little bit different. Like you said, Brown County has a greater requirement, and that's because of their terrain. It's just very difficult to get a flat acre, which is a little different here. You know, the municipalities around Washington County, they're kind of all over the place, anywhere from 1 to 5. We've seen one be really successful.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're gonna see just 1 acre lots pop up all over the county if you guys trim it back to 1, I think. And then if it is, and it does become an issue again, just like you said, we can come back and amend that. So, yeah, I think maybe being a little less restrictive and seeing how that goes and then addressing it down the road may not be a bad play. I completely understand everybody's concerns. I just don't know that it's gonna get out of control by any means.
I'd like to make some comment, if I could please. My thoughts on that, I'll just tell you up front, I suggested the 5 acres. I got shot down. That's fine. Okay, you gotta start somewhere. Okay? The 2 acres, and if you'll bear with me, I'll try to go through my rationale for the 2 acres. And part of this has to do with the BZA as well. But if we go an acre, you know, young couples, people talk about starting out, families and all, may not have the money to do things, and I get it, I was there one time, okay? But you go in, you build a house, you set a modular or some sort of housing, it's fine, whatever. You've got that, okay, you know, a lot size is 43,560 square feet, and that sounds like a lot. But when you lay it out, it's only about a 200-foot square, or 230 by 230. So you put a house on it. Well, a few years later, you know, families grow, kids, maybe a parent moves in or whatever, you need a bigger house. So you put something else on that property. Times get better, you have kids decide, well, we need a boat. But then we need a shed to put it in, or a building, I shouldn't use the word shed, but a building to put it in. It's 40 by 60. It's what, 2,400 square feet, isn't it? Yeah, 40 by 60, 2,400 square feet. So, oh, well, we got a septic system. Oh, we don't forget the septic system. And that takes whatever the square footage are. You can tell me more about it than I can.
Like an average 3-bedroom system of a sand line system now takes a couple thousand square feet.
Okay.
So it's not near the half acre or
Well,
whatever.
I get that, yeah. Then okay, we've got a driveway in there as well. Well, then we decide we want a camper, whatever. You know, we need a bigger building. I guess an acre probably would fit out there. But I guess I'm trying to think ahead for people, just a tick here, about, okay, if they've got an acre, but if they're crowding property lines, trying to put up their 40 by 60, because they don't have room on that acre, and their garden spot, and all that in there, next thing we know, they're gonna put up, if they wanna do something, they've gotta go before BZA to get approval, maybe to do that. Whereas if we start out with 2 acres right off the bat, we don't have to, the BZA won't be seeing these people because they want to put up a building because they don't have room anywhere else, and they've got to crowd the property line, they've got to crowd their neighbor and all that. So that was my thought process behind that. Makes perfectly good sense to Kevin here, but I've been told in public meetings before that I'm too simple-minded. It don't work that way. So, you know, that was my rationale for the 2 acres versus an acre. Because when you start cramming stuff in, 43,560 square feet, it fills up fast. And next thing you know, you're right up against the neighbor's property line, you know. And so that was my rationale for doing that, for going for the 2 acres, and I still like the 2 acres. So, but somebody can, maybe they can sway me, you know, I'll listen. I won't cuss or fuss or nothing like that. But that's my rationale for it. So, thank you.
Okay. Do you have any comments, Marcia?
No, sir.
What's the acre size in your subdivision?
2.
2?
But a number of people own more than one lot.
Okay.
So we have, there's several people who have almost 5 acres.
Okay, I'm going to try to communicate. And he would like to stay in the neighborhood. Property's expensive. They don't own a lot of property. They would like to keep him close because they're a close family. They work together. But obviously, they want him out of the house. This is a situation where the 2 acre minimum hurts them. In a perfect world, which we do not live in, I would think like Danielle. You know, I wish, you know, we had a 40 acre minimum, but I'm a country person, so to speak. I don't like big cities, I don't like towns, don't like going to town. And then I would also kind of side with Kevin, but we don't live in that world. The reality is that, you know, we have people out there, things are expensive. Ground is expensive. Goes up more and more every day. So I feel their pain. I understand why people get upset because we have proposed a 2 acre minimum when, quite frankly, a lot of young people just can't afford it. I don't necessarily agree with it 100%, but I really, I forget who said, I don't think we're going to get a rash of 1 acre lots. I think you said that, Connor. So I'm really not that concerned about it. I'm more concerned about the person, the young person that can't afford 2 acres, but they can't afford 1 acre. And I don't want to hinder them. And as it stands now, I'm kind of leaning toward the 1 acre. I know it works in other counties, and it's something that could, if it gets out of hand, we could change it later. Would you want to just briefly talk about what Brown County went through with changing their lot sizes, and they had a lot of the public who didn't like it, and what they ended up doing in the end?
Daniel may be able to hit on that better than I can. I wasn't super involved in the Brown County process. I just know the reason that they went with the larger acreage and the larger lot size or parcel size was due to a lot of the terrain issues they were battling.
Well, there's a lot of places in this county that have terrain issues.
Yeah.
We had a case a couple years ago. So, what do you want? What do you have any comments on that, Daniel?
Yeah, can I
Yes.
on that? Yeah, so the Brown County, to answer the Brown County issue, it had more to do with Danielle's point of the comprehensive plan than it did anything. They took a good look at what they wanted their county to be, what they wanted their county to represent. Brown County, for some reason, in the last 5 years, is getting a huge influx of Chicago residents. And they really don't know why. I don't know if it's being marketed to Chicago, but they're getting a lot of Chicago residents. And they saw their county being carved up just constantly, and it lost sight of what they wanted, their comprehensive plan, and what they wanted Brown County to be. We know Brown County is a rural community that takes a lot of pride in their large large tracts of nature. So it had more to do with the comprehensive plan and what they wanted the county to be. Now, it was a terrain issue because, you know, as you said, when you go to put a septic system on, you know, the health department now, it's you've got to have an approved and secondary approved. And so if you don't have the soil quality or the soil type, or you have too much change in terrain, that's going to chew up that acre in a hurry. So it was both the terrain and the comprehensive plan side of it. And the one thing to think about that from here is, you know, this ordinance falls into rural Washington County. This doesn't pertain to the 2 mile fringe. And I think the 2 mile fringe got lost even when we talked about the zoning ordinance. This isn't talking about somebody a mile out of town. This is rural Washington County regulations. So I think the comprehensive plan side of it is just as important as what size do you need to make the requirements for septic, home, outbuildings, and so forth.
Makes sense, thank you.
Can I say something?
You sure can.
Okay. I wanted to go back to what David said, just to clarify. We talked about this a lot. And I was kind of, just for everybody to know, I was kind of on the fence too, believe it or not. I don't know why I've seemed to have been cornered in on certain things, but I've thought a lot about this. And when he was talking about, Irvin Day talked about how it's easier to sell with it being 2 acres, it's not necessarily that it's easiest to sell.
Easiest to market.
It may be easier to market, but it's easier to live. It's easy, you know, and that goes back to what Kevin talked about. When you're young and you don't have a lot of money, you start with this, and then you grow and you grow, and then before you know it, sometimes what you need doesn't fit anymore. And I've worked in real estate for over 30 years, and I've seen that a lot. Just different examples, I have seen people want to sell their house because of that reason. They want to have a garage, they want, you know, we live in agricultural Washington County. That's what I want to drive around and see all the time. I don't want Floyd County. I don't want Clark County. I want our crop ground. This is where I live, this is where I was born and raised, and that's what I want to see here. But when I see somebody sell a house and they're like, we don't understand, this house is selling for $250,000, but my house is only going to sell for $130,000, and the only thing they have that I don't is a garage. And it doesn't cost me $120,000 to put up that garage. It's very difficult to explain to them, you're now trying to sell a piece of property that doesn't fit for you anymore because you're now to that place and you've cut your market down to somebody that they have to understand that it's not going to fit for them either someday. So it cuts their market ability, and that's maybe where the market value comes in. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to clear up on that. I wanted people to know that I've started out on 1 acre. I know what it is. I started out on 1 acre because that's all I could afford. And then I bought another acre. And then it came to the point where I was able to buy an additional 6 acres. When I bought the 1 acre, we just stood in the middle of the road with a tape measure, and we measured up the road and said, there you go. And we set a house on it. Thank goodness it fit in there. We didn't know what we was doing. I was 19 years old. Then we go to the next one. Oh, well, this is where we decided the line was. We'll go up and we'll measure it. Daniel's heard this many times. When we decided to do the 6 acres, we were like, let's get a survey now. Turns out that part of what I owned was the cemetery. So what was in my legal description that I had been running for, I don't know, 10 years before we bought the rest of that, I owned some of the cemetery. And the cemetery couldn't dispute it. Thank goodness no dead people were put in there in my area. You know, and that's what I kept thinking, that would have been a mess. But anyway, because of that survey, we were able to go in and get everything corrected. You know, there's not ever going to be an issue again. We hear this stuff all the time in the county. So I have to agree with what Emily says and I totally support what she says, we have got to come up with some rules. As far as the subdivision control, I'm in between the 1 and 2 acres. I agree, I don't know that we're just gonna see all this influx of 1 acres everywhere, because I drive from county to county, and I believe Jackson County has 1 acre, correct? And I don't drive through Jackson County and see nothing but 1 acre parcels everywhere. So I'm not saying that that's gonna happen here, and it's like we've talked about, it can be changed. If we see that it becomes an issue, it can be changed. The whole 2 acre thing, if you wanna talk about values, I'm not an expert, but if you go down to, this is just something to throw out there, if you go in and say, you can put anything on 1 acre, what does it do to the market value on the 1 acres as opposed to 2 acres? I've thought that a lot. In rural Washington County, I don't know what it'll do. You know, will it increase that 1 acre? Does it then make 1 acre worth, kind of like when you do go to Floyd County, 1 acre can be worth $75,000, where 2 acres is only worth 80? You know, it's like, I don't know. But right now, we don't have any rule on it at all, other than, what is it, 3/4?
Well, there's actually no lot size minimum.
There's no lot size at all? The 3/4 comes in with the septic.
No, the 3/4 was the previous rule and ordinance that we had on septic.
On septic
The new
stuff.
ordinance, there's no.
No, but that's
requirement
where
on
the
septic.
3/4 came in, right? It
Is
had to
the
do,
septic, yes.
what had to do with the previous septic, yeah.
1 acre if you have a water well.
Yeah.
Private.
And believe me, I'm on a well, so I dealt with that too.
Yeah.
You know, I had to go through all of those rules and everything in 1987. That's how far back rules go. We have to have rules.
I'm a little older than that, but I went through the exact same thing, just.
Yeah, just a little bit, yeah.
Could we put kind of a question mark on it and
Yes.
wait till after the public hearing and see what the public
Yes.
My kind of
input
thought,
on that is?
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
my kind of thought on it was, you have a very valid point, and Kevin's absolutely right about building on later and stuff. Of course, they knew that when they got into it, but what would you and I have done if back then we'd have had to have 2 acres? My dad wasn't gonna give me 2, I'd like to killed him to give me 1, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't giving him anything. My parents didn't have nothing to give me. So everything I have, I got myself.
Well, I just think it's important to understand that rather than someone have to go to the trouble of going through, coming before the BZA or getting a variance, if we keep the 2 acres, we could snuff that out, and if we did make it an acre, that would accommodate the people who can't necessarily afford 2 acres or more, and I think it would help people and maybe avoid having to get a variance. And I think we all know that obviously if someone was offered 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 acres, you know, for about the same money as they could acquire 1 acre, that they would certainly choose more acreage. They're not trying to limit themselves to 1 acre because they want to. It's a have-to situation. So I agree with Andrew. We'll think about that, and it's something we need to make a decision on. And we've got a couple other agenda items I'd like for everyone to think on this, and we'll wrap up the subdivision portion and move on to the confined feeding minimum acreage, unless anyone has something else they'd like to talk about.
I'd like to know if Daniel has anything else he wants to share.
Yeah, can I just,
Yes,
can I come up front?
you sure can.
I won't take, too much more of your time on this. I think I came, I don't know, a year, 2 years ago, time flies.
Yeah.
And maybe
does.
be one of the reasons that the ball got rolling on this. The first thing I want to clarify is why. Why do we need this? this, and not just to the board, but to everyone in the crowd. I want to talk to everyone here that this is to protect the public, not to hinder the public. Just like Emily said, with all the people that come in her office and the stories she hears and the sad stories, I hear these all the time. And I've heard some of the worst of the worst. I've sat at more kitchen tables and seen families cry over things that you just can't believe. I do a lot of work here in Washington County, and I see things here in Washington County that I just to tell you the truth, I don't regularly see anywhere else. You have a current subdivision control ordinance. The problem is there's not much about it that's black and white. It's about 90% gray. That's problem number one. Problem number two is you have a group of developers and some people that particularly like to do business in Washington County due to your lack of rules. You have people that are literally taking advantage of Washington County and profiting from it. And all that is doing is hurting the residents, okay? So that's why it needs to be, that's the big reason why this needs to be done. I could get into stories of houses over lines, people who found out that the bank is repossessing their house because it was put on a mortgage on a property that they didn't know. I can tell you stories about a lady who thought she had 50 acres, only to find out that her legal description was incorrect and she has 36. Just last week alone, I was in southern Washington County, and 3 siblings allowed all their nieces and nephews to put trailers on a piece of property, which is fine. 3 of the 4 trailers are built over the property lines. And now, instead of paying a little bit of money to do this right, originally, they're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars in title work, deed work, survey work, attorney fees to get this all cleaned up. And I see this on a regular basis, and it doesn't have to be this way. I would much rather make a living just going out and surveying properties correctly and make sure we're establishing things the right way. And I do that. I do a lot of that here. But I also spend a lot of my time surveying in Washington County, trying to fix the problems and the messes that have been created due to the lack of the control that you had in the previous subdivision control and the abuse that's been taking place. Just a few things that I heard and wrote down is private roads. You guys have more private roads and private easements to access homes than any place I've ever seen. I think you could take all the adjoining counties combined. And I talk to people all the time that say, I don't know why Washington County won't maintain my road. Well, it's not a public road. You bought this place not understanding what you truly have. You don't live on a public road. This causes problems for the commissioners. It causes problems for the highway department. And now people are buying and selling real estate who don't truly understand what they bought. Danielle brought up a lot of good points. There are hardship variances. I've seen those in several counties where you can vary from the rules of how many residences are on a property due to a hardship variance. So I do know that's possible. That's something I've seen. When it comes to the acreage, I know that there's a lot in this ordinance, and I know the acreage is going to be one of the biggest things that gets kicked around. And the thing I'll say about this, I don't have a dog in the fight when it comes to that. I really don't. I can only tell you what I've seen. I've been in business for nearly 23 years. I think I've worked in just about every southern Indiana county. And I've seen every rule and regulation you can see in a subdivision control ordinance. I've read dozens of subdivision control ordinances. And I've seen the acreage all over the place. The one thing I will say about the acre is this. The acre is a minimum. And keep that in mind. So if I go out to survey somebody's place and we go and they say, we need an acre, and they call the health department and they say you have a primary and a secondary, but they have to be here. But in order to do a primary and a secondary and get your home in, we're going to need an acre and a quarter. Well, then that's what we do. That's what we survey. If it takes an acre and a half, then that's what it is. But keep in mind, it's a minimum requirement. Okay? So if you have to go beyond that to include your septic to get the 2 regulated areas, or you have to go beyond that to get a barn for your camper or whatever, you can do so, especially if you're buying property or splitting off from family. Keep in mind when you think of the acreage, think of it as a minimum instead of this is what we want to see. Currently, it was 3/4 of an acre, and I'm just going to tell you right now, that does not work. Every time we've tried to split out 3/4 of an acre to survey out for somebody, and then we go and they get their soil test done, and they figure out where their driveway and their house is going to be, I can tell you right now, that is just not even close. Urban Day was a great friend of mine. Urban and I talked about this subdivision control ordinance being updated for a decade or more. And I'm happy that we're finally sitting here and having this conversation. I'm happy for the residents of Washington County. I'm happy for people like Emily and myself that this is going to make things easier. I want to make sure that I make this clear, this is not to restrict or hinder people. As a matter of fact, this isn't perfect as written. But I will tell you this, out of all of the dozens of counties of subdivision control ordinances I've ever read, this is one of the very best I have ever read. For the reason of, it is common sense, it is not restrictive, and it cleans up 98% of the problems or more that Emily and I see. This is very good. It's not perfect. It could use some edits. There's some things that needs to be gone over. As a surveyor, I don't want to see restrictive rules. When I go out to survey somebody's property, I don't want a 40-page manual I have to adhere to survey somebody's property any more than the people want. Okay, so I don't want these restrictions either, but there has to be common sense. And I will tell you that this does that. The bones of this is very, very good. Okay? So, just as Connor said, if anybody has any questions, they are more than free to reach out to me at any time. I make myself available. If there's anybody in the crowd that would like to reach out to me, I try to make myself available as well. I want to make sure everybody understands this, and just like Emily said. So anything I can do to help to spring this forward, I'll sure be here to help. And if anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, whether it's now or after the meeting or anytime.
Thank you, Dan, for that, and thanks, Connor, and thank you both for always answering the calls and for all the help you guys have done for us. I really do appreciate it.
The last thing I want to say is, and this is going back to what was experienced with the zoning ordinance. Don't rush it. Take your time on it. Make sure you as a board are happy with it. Okay, this is just my advice. Make sure the board is happy with it. You understand it. And then give the time for the public to give their feedback. Don't rush it. Let's get it right, because something like this doesn't change every year. An ordinance like this is something that goes into place and it lasts decades. So we need to make sure we get the public opinion. We need to make sure we take it slow and do it right. But we're on a really, really good path here to help the public.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sorry, Connor, I didn't mean to kick you out of your seat.
That's all right.
Okay. We need to talk a little bit about minimum acreage requirements for a confined feeding operation. This goes back to, once again, property splits. I think Travis brought this to our attention back last summer, I believe. He said it was coming. Apparently, just to give an example, you have a person who built a poultry or hog operation on, say, 100 acres, and due to the turmoil that we had with Tyson, a lot of growers didn't get their contracts renewed for whatever reason, or maybe they get burnt out on raising these animals after 10 or 20 years, retirement, so on and so forth. They decide they want to sell off a parcel. And we're going to try to lean pretty heavily on Danielle and Kevin here. Well, everybody here should just pick pick them out. But we do have an issue coming down the road, and I don't know if we've seen it in any great numbers yet, but we do need to address it. And the simple fact of the matter is we need to make sure that the setbacks are maintained when people sell these parcels around these confined feeding operations. So there's kind of the nuts and bolts of the situation, and I'd just like to start with Danielle and listen to what she thinks about how we should address this and go right around the room.
So I just passed around our current confined feeding, or current ordinances related to confined feedings. That's what's being passed around. I'm gonna pull a Kevin and get emotional here.
I'm over it.
When I started in this job, the confined feeding ordinances were on the table. And it was a difficult time. Not as difficult as the last few months that we've experienced, but it was difficult because there was a lot of controversy over these. And as someone who loves this county and loves agriculture, and I serve in an agricultural position, it was difficult for me to agree to regulate agriculture in Washington County and not regulate anything else. Basically anything else. And so when we were talking about the confined feeding ordinances and we passed these and went through all of that, the idea that we were going to put together a comprehensive zoning ordinance to address the other concerns in the county was in my mind, and one reason why I was so supportive of these ordinances. And at this point in time, I'm not in a position where I believe, and I'm open to hearing what other people say, and I could vote differently than what I'm saying right now, that I don't know that we should restrict confined feeding operations any more than they already are. At this point in time, I feel like if we're going to make any amendments to that, that could be a part of a potential comprehensive zoning ordinance in the future. I understand this is an issue that we've talked about, and I know that we have talked about having different scoring rubrics for the actual operating barns for confined feeding versus those accessory structures such as dead compost facilities, those kinds of things, which are very beneficial component of the entire operation. So at this point, I don't have a recommendation for a minimum lot size for that. I do agree with our setbacks that are already included in this ordinance. I think there are concerns about what you're talking about, Todd, is related to people selling off property. I don't know how, and maybe the surveyor can help me answer this question, but when those properties are surveyed, I'm guessing the setbacks aren't maintained, or they are maintained. I don't know how that works, but there needs to be a process for maintaining the setbacks, but creating any additional regulation or ordinances at this time is not something I'm in favor of.
Do you have anything, Andrew?
Not right now.
Emily?
I'm open here.
Any questions, anything, comments, questions?
No, I rely heavily on Danielle's.
Yeah,
Expertise.
she's a veteran. She's been in the trenches
Been here longer than all.
14 years, right?
Absolutely.
Kevin?
I do, to go along with what I think Travis was looking at here, these properties that have sold off, they're finding they're not meeting setback requirements from property lines, and all these were already existing buildings. And I could be wrong on some of this, but he would be better explaining it probably than me. But now with the changes of with what's going on in agriculture and confined feeding, these people, they're changing their operations a little bit, so they're having to come in and get, since they don't meet now, they're asking for variances to put in. And I've been a supporter of, even if they don't have the footages, they're wanting to put in animal compost building, mortality compost building, or manure storage, which is great, as good as you can get for water quality. You know, to do that, and they're asking to put that on these lots that are already too small. And then you've got the guy that's coming in, or not the guy, the farmer that's coming in, man or woman, okay, either or, maybe both at times, come in. But, you know, and they're wanting to build a facility to do what they want to build, a facility, want to build it right. So they're saying, okay, we've got to have setbacks, we've got to have so much property to do this on, but yet the guy over here does not have adequate footages, adequate area to build those type structures. So I think there's a little bit there. I think he's running into, or going to run into, some of that issue. And he did bring it before us sometime last year. You guys remember dates better than I do. So, you know, I think we need, at some point, they're going to have to go before BZA and ask for a variance. BZA could, I think he sent me, I found them on my phone the other day. I was looking at the parcels, don't know who they belong to. And, you know, working in soil conservation for 32 years, I know where a lot of these farms are, but I didn't recognize where I did recognize one. But anyway, and so I think at some point, if people are, we're going to have to help, because apparently we're just going to have to help give some guidance to people, so that if they sell the property with those on it, that they need to have adequate acreages. So if they want to put that mortality building up, or they want to put that egg washing station in for the product that they would have to have, you know, if they come in now, BZA is going to have to say yes or no. Well, somewhere down the road, I think we're going to have to help do that. Not that I want to be more restrictive, but sometimes, well, even I need some guidance every now and then.
Well, that's what it says on section 402, section 400, 402. It talks about the substitution and extension of non-conforming uses. And so at this point in time, that's what should be happening, is if we're changing those or those kinds of things. We should be following this procedure, and it is coming before the Board of Zoning Appeals. But I could be incorrect, and I need to go on the website and look, but don't we have a separate score sheet for the things, accessory structures like the
Yes.
manure handling and things like that? And
Yeah.
so that's where some of those concerns can be addressed right now, I think. I don't know. I wish Travis was here. I have a couple
I
questions.
think Daniel
Yeah.
Daniel has.
So the biggest problem you have with the confined feeding operations is, for Travis's standpoint, is he can't measure these setbacks. And the reason why he can't measure the setbacks to find if they're too close to the line is because most of these confined feeding operations were established by somebody writing a legal description. We're working on one in Livonia right now that's 3 turkey barns, and there's setback issues. Well, when they created those barns and separated out that parcel, if they would have had the new subdivision control ordinance in place, then Travis would have been able to go out and verify the setbacks. The biggest thing isn't always the acreage on a confined feeding operation, it's how close it is to something. So the setbacks are the most crucial thing. Well, if Travis can't measure setbacks, because he's got nothing to measure off of, because most of them were done by legal description, it just creates a mess. So that's the biggest thing to think of, is how are we even measuring setbacks? You know what I mean? What are you measuring from? Where do you know where that building is in relation to that property? That doesn't really matter if it's 5 acres, 10 acres, or 20 acres. It doesn't matter. If you don't know where it sets and you don't know if it meets the setbacks and you can't measure from anything physical, then you just don't know.
You mean like a benchmark?
Hey
To some
Dan,
degree.
as a licensed surveyor, this is a question, not as the elected surveyor, as a licensed surveyor. I own a confined feeding operation and I have 100 acres, but I'm just wanting to sell off my barns. I'm calling you. I'm gonna do it the right way. I want my property surveyed. I wanna know, because I wanna keep as much of my property as possible, as most people do.
Right.
Okay. I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know ahead of time, or do you know that you need to look for I think it's a 200-foot setback. I don't know, but I think we're 200 feet off the property line. Does a licensed surveyor know that, or do you know that you need to go look for that, or
So,
is that something that or does the property owner need to know that?
yeah, usually the setbacks is governed by whether that be the planning commission or the building commissioner or whatever. So we always let people know that, we put the property in based on the size restrictions, but you have to adhere by the county setbacks. Because every county's got different side and setbacks or front setbacks.
So
But
yeah.
what you have is, though, then is, it gives Travis the ability to now go out and pull from a surveyor's pen and say, okay, you have a 200-foot setback. Your survey marker is here, this building needs to be placed. And it gives Travis something that he can physically measure to. And it gives the landowner something that they can go, okay, I know I owned it here, and I know I have to be 200 feet from there. Instead of, well, I had a legal description prepared, I really don't know where that is, Travis can't really measure to anything, let's go ahead and build the barns, and let's just hope that we meet the restrictions. And really honestly, that's what's happening now.
We need to require a survey.
Well, that would be fixed in your subdivision control things.
Seems like common
I've been
sense.
preaching it for a while, but I've been preaching it for a while.
Yeah, you have.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
And I guess this is a concern that I have because we utilize this score sheet that says that we mark a box. They get, if we're, depending on what kind of operation it is, I'm making these numbers up, so don't quote me on these, but, if I'm supposed to be 200 feet from a property line.
Yeah, let's just say that's what it is, 'cause I don't know.
200 feet from a property line, but because I'm gonna be 500 feet now from a property line, I might get more points. Because that's providing more opportunity for the neighbors to
Accessory
be.
building.
Yes,
Or
those
something.
kinds of things. So we give them more points. But at this point, I'm kind of concerned about our point system and our score sheet because we're not able to do these things based upon what you're telling me, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We probably need to consult with Travis a little more about this, but I think we all agree we need to do something pretty soon because this has been happening and, we ran into it really the last couple of years when there were grants available for manure storage, which we're all in favor of because it helps pollution and everything else. And we kind of had a rash of those, well, not a rash, 2 or 3 that we approved. And I believe maybe on one we had to have a variance because it was kind of tight as far as the space, but it's something coming, so we all need to kind of bone up on this.
Also with this, some of these buildings are changing in what they're doing.
Yes.
And how they're doing it, and it requires more.
Yeah.
And here we are with pictures of lines, supposedly survey lines or drawn lines, somebody's drew the lines, running right through the edge of the barn, and that don't work. It's just not even feasible, and common sense was used. Every time, well, no. I'm not gonna comment further than that on common sense, but You know, when we're selling, if I sell Lori a piece of, if I've got poultry houses, and I'm not picking on whether it's poultry or swine or whatever, dairy or whatever, you know, I want to keep as much of that cropland as possible. You know, so we sell right up pretty much to the building. Somewhere along the line, we need to educate people that it takes more than just the 5 acres for that to work on and work properly with. How do we do that? Because it's an education thing. Because a lot of times Travis don't know till those lines are drawn till he sees them.
Well, when they show up on the GIS, that's just a picture.
Right.
I mean, and that's all he has to go by.
Exactly.
You know,
I
we
see what
surveyors joke that GIS stands for get it surveyed because
I tell people that all the time.
I wholeheartedly have sat here, Daniel, and thought, we are so, I bought it at 9/10 of an acre, and the attorney did just the legal description, you know, off of it. Now, it just so happened that there had been a survey done before, but I didn't necessarily understand all of that. But I told my family, I said, you know, if you buy property or if you sell property, you better have it surveyed.
Yeah,
That's me, but it costs money. Please don't take me wrong when I say this. It costs money when that young person wants to buy a piece of property. It costs money to do that. Well, I'm sorry, Lisa. You may write a legal description. It may be cheaper than having it surveyed. So that's the avenue we travel.
Yeah, the argument is always made, well, then that's going to be more expensive.
Right.
But if you would see some of the expenses that I see on a regular basis that people have to pay to fix these messes,
I don't doubt
these
it.
people would rather much go back in time and fix this and pay the money that it took to do it right first.
So all we're trying to do, we want to do, is one thing here, is for us to do it right. For do it right for our people that live in our counties. You know, but that's what I feel like this board wants to do. And I think that's what we ought to do. I know that's vague about how we're going to do it or whatever, but that's not.
Can I ask one preliminary question? When the use of the building changes and it falls under 402, is there different setbacks for different types of uses?
Yes.
Whether it be dairy, whether it be swine? See, I'm not familiar with all the different setbacks.
Yep, so on page 6, we talk about, so we defined, feeding operations. We broke it down when we did this ordinance into what we call animal feeding operations. And so there's a list of what defines an animal feeding operation. 250 mature cows, 18,000 turkeys, those kinds of things. Those are typically not regulated by IDEM at that level. And we were getting several barns or operations established in Washington County that met that 10,000 laying hens, 10,000 ducks, whatever it was. And so this was the Plan Commission's way of trying to provide some regulation, setbacks, things like that for those that were kind of flying under the radar.
Under the radar.
Okay. So then we have confined feeding operations, and those are the standards based upon like state rules. And so they'll have a list. The state has a list of, okay, to be considered a confined feeding operation, maybe, and I'm making these numbers up, maybe it's 25,000 turkeys. So if they're between 18,001 and 25,000 turkeys, then they're going to fall underneath a confined feeding, and they're going to follow a set of standards in this book, or in this paper. And then we have confined animal feeding operations, which meet some state and federal levels. And so maybe that, making these numbers up again, is 100,000 turkeys. So anything between what a CFO and that 100,000 turkeys. So, and all of those numbers are made up I don't know what those are, so please don't hold me to any of that.
But the
And
state
then they have a-
regulations are different too.
I'm sorry.
So even if it falls up under a confined feeding operation, there are rules and setbacks for turkeys, dairy.
No,
So if the use of the building changes,
so in my opinion, so if it's an animal feeding operation, let's say I had a barn that had 10,000 laying hens, but then I decided to change that barn and now I'm gonna put in ducks. As long as I have 10,000, if you look here, I have 10,000 ducks, the rules, the setbacks, things like that are gonna be the same. Now, if I have this 10,000 laying hens and I decide I want to take that barn and I want to make it 500 mature dairy cows, then that's where the setbacks and things would change
that would change.
because then
Okay.
now I've got, a lot of it has to do with animal units and things like manure output and things like that. So,
Okay.
that's where that would change, so.
Some of these buildings that we're talking about here today have been in, maybe turkeys, and they went to layers.
Mhm.
So they need different situations, and the numbers will change in that, which will also throw it into a different category.
Right. So-
Even though it may be a poultry, it's gonna change it in that there. Well, then, you know, the extra things that we're gonna add to those, like an egg washing house, you know, well, then you've got gray water, what are you gonna do with all that? And this is what they're gonna be coming in for variance with, and they really don't have, we don't know for sure where the lines are at. But we'll get it figured out one of these days, Daniel, hopefully. But, yeah, so that, I think that's the use change that I think Travis is kind of thinking about.
It's challenging.
In that, so it is challenging, and we want to do what's best for everybody. We want to do what's best for the environment. That's why I said before, you know, I've always been a proponent, even if they don't have the setback, but they want to put in a manure storage facility, I'm one to say, go for it, because it's better than having it piled out on the ground with nothing. So,
Would someone explain to me why we can't maintain the same setback distance in feet, whether they split their property off or not?
Because we don't know where the 200 feet is because they don't have to have it surveyed.
Well, I was assuming we had that ready to,
I didn't want to be mean on yourself.
let's assume that's gonna happen.
Well, I made a note on here, and this isn't to solve any problems, but Lisa came in today and we kind of talked a little bit, and then Travis did tell us that this was kind of a thing, and I do agree with Danielle, like I don't think we need to always put it on. But if you're gonna split your property, we're saying you have to have it surveyed with the subdivision control ordinance, if it gets passed, that's what we're saying. So maybe there's not a lot we can do with the parcels that we have now. We're just gonna have to variance it out. That might be a new saying that we have to have, I don't know. But what if we add to their permit sheet, if you're going to build barns on a property, which is a lot of money, then you should survey your property, and you should survey out 200 feet from where you think your barns are gonna be, and mark that. So if in the future you want to sell off just your barns, at least you know where that inset's gonna be. Is that possible?
I don't know of a single county personally that does confined feeding operation splits or barns splits that doesn't require a survey. To my knowledge, and we can maybe look it up, but to my knowledge of all the counties I work in, Washington County is the only one I know.
So like if we move forward, and if a subdivision control ordinance says you have to have a survey to split your property, and we have an acreage minimum, but for confined feeding, that's not making it more restrictive. Well, I mean, it is, but it would almost be like a level playing field. If you're gonna split your property and you wanna build a house, you need to have a survey, but if you're gonna split your property and you wanna do confined feeding and you're putting a structure on there, maybe.
But it would fall under the same ordinance.
But then like mark, because what happened, like, they sell close to the barns, like, close to the barns. Maybe like you, again, it's on the GIS, so
Yeah,
me and you know, but maybe you could walk around them.
Most counties, before you get the permit to build your barns, you have to be able to prove to the jurisdiction of that county that you're putting those barns in a location that meets those setbacks.
With a survey.
You can have setbacks all you want, but if you don't know where they're at or where you're measuring from, then they're useless.
Or maybe they're like on a parcel that is from the barn 200 foot to the property line. I don't know.
I think you're
I don't know.
misunderstanding what she's asking. She's asking if somebody's subdividing around existing barns.
Existing barns.
Existing barns.
Existing barns,
Yeah.
because that's what's happening.
And I would
They're
say
already there.
There's
Yeah.
two things.
Yeah.
You asked them earlier, I don't think he called you, but you would typically know that's a confined feeding operation.
Oh, yeah.
And you would know that if we had a rule on it.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew that you
You're asking if it's
misunderstood. We were on the
existing
same page. I knew that you didn't understand my question, but I knew that you,
Yeah, and if you approve the subdivision control ordinance, all of these plats are coming before, again, you were Travis, right? So, I mean, you'll see the plat, you'll know that that's a confined feeding operation, you'll make sure that those setbacks. are
and if
met.
it's a
Usually Dan will catch that anyway, but. yeah.
so if it's a confined feeding, because I don't want to say I've never saw a confined feeding survey, because that would be absurd to say. But if there are barns on it, and not just you as a surveyor, but I'm going to say you because you're sitting here in front of me, would you do those dotted lines? Like this is the barn, and then, you know, like the fence markers and stuff like normal?
Yes.
Is that what normal surveyors would do?
Talking about an existing.
Yeah, they're existing, and then, like, I own them now, but I'm gonna sell them to Danielle, but I wanna keep my farm ground and just sell her my barns.
Yes. So, yeah, it's existing.
And if it's in our ordinance now, which is not in subdivision control, it's in our confined feeding, that it needs a 200-foot setback, and I hired a surveyor, would you have to look at this to know it's a 200-foot setback, or would the property owner have to be like, hey, we got an ordinance on that, and I have to be 200 feet from the line?
But
Yeah. That's tough when it comes to setbacks.
Yeah,
Because it's
because
all
that's where
about-
we're hitting now.
Yeah, it's all about where is that setback, where is that? Where is that disclosed from a surveyor standpoint?
Yeah,
If we're doing a site plan for a new building, then we have to disclose it.
yeah.
If you're doing a site plan for a new building, more likely the
Yeah.
lender's gonna say, you need a survey, if you're gonna
Exactly.
buy it out, so,
but if
or I would if I.
Yeah, I was
was
just throwing out questions, not trying to put anyone on the spot, just because we don't know. So I'm just
No,
trying to
It's
get
just
some
discussion.
information.
It's just discussion.
Yeah, not trying to put anybody on the spot or make anyone look like the bad guy. It's just,
We're having some situations where some are slipping through,
Yeah.
where initially, when it's permitted, the setbacks, they meet the setback requirements, but then they're splitting them off where there's no setback or very little setback, going from a 200-foot to the property line down to maybe 10-foot or less.
maybe 10.
So what we're afraid of is
I
that
know
we're gonna
one
have
of those right now.
situations where that setback is eliminated and people may come and build close to these confined feeding structures. And maybe when they buy or they build, they're not being operated, but maybe they start operating later. And then we've got a coming to the nuisance situation, and who's at fault? I'm concerned that the county may share some of the liability in that. So we are talking about ways that we can prevent that from happening.
Well, you could always require setbacks to be put on your split surveys. I mean, that's something you could look at.
And we've talked about restrictive covenants that require them to stay in place and not be split off from that property with those buildings. But now that the surveyor's office is using GIS and not the paper maps anymore, we talked this morning about ways for Emily and her staff to catch that. But that could create a real problem down the road. But it's
Yes.
happening now.
Well, let's, if you would, if the rest of the board is okay with this, could you kind of look into that a little bit, what you just said, maybe a rough draft, some wordage on how to incorporate that into a property split where it is recorded on the deed.
It's not a secret.
That makes sense, because we have got to catch that before somebody does harm to themselves or their neighbor and they don't even realize it.
Sure.
Is it something that we can add to our subdivision control ordinance that says that every confined feeding operation division
Please
that
see.
occurs has to go to the plat committee for review to make sure that all those setbacks are, is that legal? I don't know.
Yeah,
You can add any restriction to the plat committee.
So that way, there's a group of people who's reviewing that and making sure that
I think
this is.
I'm just gonna speak from like courthouse. I don't wanna speak from the surveyor standpoint, because I'm not a licensed surveyor, so I don't do what Dan does, but from inside the courthouse, when stuff gets added to deeds, and Dan might see it from in his courthouse too, it gets dropped off. It doesn't always get retyped up on the next one, so when it gets added to a deed, unless it's a document by itself, and even then, it can get missed in a title search, not falling on anyone. It's just an accident, like a title search might miss it, or a property owner, it just might not get added on.
Well, when someone drops off a deed that was just a legal description prepared, and it was for a confined feeding operation, how do you know that, Emily, until you go to put it on the GIS? You have no
We
way
don't.
of knowing what that legal description is when it hits your desk.
We don't, because really, in the surveyor's office, what you're doing with your property and what's on it is no use to me. As long as we read your legal description, it closes, it's in this parcel, send it to the next office. That's the surveyor's office job in Washington County. We don't look at how many houses you have, we don't look if you've got a new swimming pool or not, we don't look for barns. I mean, and if that's something that we need to start doing, but that's not the surveyor's office's forte. And used to, up until just like this year, it was white maps, like white drawings with black lines on them. Dan used to see them all the time, 1 mile squares. So until it got back to be put on the computer, we didn't even know anything, because that's how the office ran. And we weren't the only office in the state that ran that way, but we're updating. Every office does so. We're hitting an updating period, and we're using the GIS, so you can see the area plan.
Progress.
Thank you.
So it's new. Mistakes will still be made, but human error, and we're working on it. But it's just, you know.
And this goes back to some of the concerns, right back to where we were talking about a young couple goes and puts a manufactured home on 1 acre beside some barns that hasn't been used for 10 years, and I can name one of them, and then it turns around. I mean, what's the future use going to be if there's nothing that says it can't be reused for something else? Now these people are living next to a nuisance that now affects their property value, and
Right. And I need to look in here, but I think that there's something that says if it sits vacant for so long, then it does have to become conforming to restart
Yeah.
as
okay.
a new thing. So if it's been sitting 10 years, we're using that magic number, 10 years, and it was a broiler operation, and it was conforming at the time, or if it was non-conforming at the time, if it's set empty, it has to become conforming
Okay.
moving forward. So they would have to meet the setbacks to be able to do
So
that.
that's some protection.
Yes, there's some protection. I need to look in here at what section and all that, but there's some language about that. I'm looking at Connor because he's read it.
Okay, it's getting past the witching hour here. We do have one other item on the agenda, and we do need to just touch on it briefly. If we just take 5 or 10 minutes. There was a 2-year moratorium on solar, commercial solar farms passed today by the commissioners, and I think we have some gentlemen here who are representing a company out west of town. We're going to give you, since you stuck around so long, at least give you the courtesy of we'll give you 5 minutes and tell us what your plans are and how well you're willing to work with us here in Washington County. So come on forward.
Kevin gave us this to pass out. I know what was going to be our next meeting. I'll just pass this stuff around. When you read this subdivision control, just look at that. Every red block is a subdivision.
Okay. Thank you. Just come from me.
I didn't find the pass out.
Introduce myself. Oh, it's that.
Ranger Power member.
Yeah, just here at 320 West St. Line Street, Chicago, Illinois. I believe my colleague calls.
Hi, yes, I'm Alan Snow. We're with the company Ranger Power. We introduced ourselves a little earlier, but none of them was there. So just quickly, we are a Chicago-based renewable developer. We have been working in the Midwest since 2016, in Indiana since 2017. We have projects in construction and built in Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Missouri. That's it now. We started exploring a project just west, a little south and west of the 2-mile ETJ, or extra area outside of Salem. So when we heard that there was interest in a 2-year moratorium to do an ordinance, we wanted to come introduce ourselves, offer ourselves as a resource for this. We've worked with counties all over the Midwest on ordinances, including most of the counties' projects living in Indiana. As I said this morning, I think I understand that this is new to the county, and there's a lot to kind of learn, work out, hash out. But I think this is something we can accomplish in much less than 2 years. We have sort of a limited time based on our interconnection to the grid to kind of get these projects moving and schedules, and they cost a lot longer than it takes. So, we'd be very interested in trying to, help Washington County find ordinance that will work for it, for solar, for a commercial solar energy system, as soon as possible. So, I'll pause there. Typically, I was given a lot of questions about these projects and about who we are and what we do. I'm happy to get into any questions you might have right off the bat.
I think, last week, Colin had asked, you're Colin, you're over. Oh, and I've met a couple times. He's been hanging around here, stops in every, 6 months or so for the past couple of years. Yeah, met him before. And then I spoke with you on the phone, Colin, there, and I think I asked you if you say you had a what you might call a perfect county ordinance in one of the Indiana counties, or didn't have to necessarily be in Indiana County, that you felt like was fair to both sides, because that's the goal here, to be fair and even-handed. Some people are adamantly opposed to solar farms. We have a lot of what I call legacy farmers in this county who have signed leases. We don't want to upset them, so we're kind of straddling a line and trying to keep everybody happy, which is probably impossible to do, but we're going to try. And you will be a part of that. So if you can get us any information in regards to ordinances in the state that you have seen that seem to be agreeable to you and everybody else, we'd be happy to look at.
Be great. Yeah, absolutely. There's a pretty wide variety that work for our projects, and by that I mean work in a way where they sit well where in the community that hosts them. So there's individual concerns. There's always different things in different counties and different areas that people care about. You know, I think Owen might have emailed some over to the commissioner's email.
Okay.
One of those includes, you know, ordinance that was created in Fountain County where they were not interested in vegetative buffers, but had a, you know, pretty, you know, they had quite a large setback for non-participating residences, a lesser setback for, you know, properties that didn't have a residence on it, that kind of thing. You know, as I said, we sent some over, happy to share kind of details and some of that. But in general, you know, we're looking for the county to kind of let us know sort of the envelope, you know, the boundaries, where we can build. You know, frankly, it's the less restrictions, the less expensive our project is typically, and the more individual concessions we do. It's our practice to go to every neighbor to the project, and if somebody is not happy, you know, if a county has a 150-foot setback from non-participating residences, and they are not that they feel that it's too short, we will work with them, and you know, if we're able to get that close, and most of the other project we have enough room for the panels, then we have wiggle room to move another, you know, 100 foot back.
Okay.
You know, we can. So you know. I think what is most typical of all ordinances, the things that seem to jump out and that people care most about are, you know, setbacks, fencing, vegetative screening and vegetative cover. I would say, you know, there's often kind of requirements about height and, you know, the height of the panels, I guess, would be one. You know, road use agreements are fairly typical, maybe not as part of an, or, you know, an ordinance might require a road use agreement to be entered into later with the, you know, commissioners and, you know, the highway superintendent, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Drainage agreement, drainage requirements are, you know, sometimes required. And then typically one of the biggest items is the decommissioning plan and bond required. You know, in Indiana, it's fairly standard for that to be required at, you know, in advance of construction.
Yeah.
You know, at or in advance. So these are things we're fairly, you know, familiar with, comfortable with, and you know, can kind of share different ways of doing them.
Okay.
And then yeah, and I think we did share some counties where I believe they were. We shared Fountain, Warwick, Miami. These are just ones we're more familiar with.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah. Please.
Please, right?
Yeah.
Typically, how big is a solar farm for you, commercial solar farm?
Yeah, so we're still exploring it. We still are in very, very early days. And so we don't have an exact, you know, amount. We're still in discussions with some landowners, that kind of thing. But we're looking at about 2,000 acres. And that's of parcels owned by landowners interested in participating. The reason I put it that way is that the actual size of the project would be much smaller than that. What we're studying at the Q is a 200 megawatt project, which means that's the most we can build in that project. And so, you know, our rule of thumb is, you know, typically 10 acres a megawatt should be able to handle that, you know. So that's why the 2,000 acres. Now, the actual footprint of the project for a 200 megawatt project is likely going to be much smaller than that. You know, the parcel, that acreage includes, you know, where the setbacks would be, you know, an easement for a power line, wetlands that we'd have to set back from, that kind of thing.
So in other words, you may tie up 5,000 acres. I'm just using numbers here. I don't know what you've tied up. But you may only put a 2,000 acre solar field within that 5,000 acres. Is that what you're telling me?
It was a different project than ours, maybe, but ours is, because ours is limited at 200 acres.
Oh.
You know, we tie up, we're trying to tie up as close to the amount of acres we think we're going to need.
But
if we tie up more, we're just paying for stuff we're not going to get revenue for.
Right, but you don't know for sure where that's going to fit in drainage wise.
Right.
And that type of thing. You know,
Yep.
whether it's karst topography. I go back
Yep.
to Irvington, Kentucky. If you've never been to Irvington, Kentucky, go look at it. Okay? That doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth as a farmer, as a landowner. So, but anyway, I'm open, I'll be open-minded, but, you know, that one there turned my stomach. Okay, I don't, who owns it?
It's not us.
It's not you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm just being upfront.
Yep.
Another thing I want to ask about is battery storage. Is that part of this plan as well?
No. Battery, no, that's typically kind of a separate development process. And in Indiana, there would need to be an ordinance for batteries as well. That's not really what we came here to talk about. We're just focused on our solar project.
Okay, well, I didn't, yeah, sometimes they go, almost like they go hand in hand.
They can, yeah.
They can, so I'm just,
No.
you're talking, so.
No, it's a great
I'm
question.
listening.
Yeah, it's a great question. No, this is a solar project that, you know, we would develop. You know, eventually we get a contract to sell the power, and the power buyer would buy when the sun's out, and not when the sun's not, you know.
I'm sure I've got more questions, but
I have a question.
tonight may not be the night for me.
So you heard about our surveys. You sat through our meeting.
Very, very interesting.
So, welcome to Washington County. I'm glad to have you. Since you got the intro, I think you know where my question's going. A lot of our parcels aren't surveyed, so I'm the surveyor's office here in the county. Are you requiring these people that sign in to have their property surveyed so you know you're putting panels on properties that are signing in and not on the neighbor that didn't sign in? Because if you don't, you should definitely add that to your thing.
It's a great question. I can answer definitively that we spend a huge amount of time and money on this question. You know, we go through these we pull title on every parcel that's involved in the project. We you know, hire a firm to do an Alta survey. You know, we fly the area and do 1-foot topo and basically create you know, an Alta that shows us what is actually out there. And it's not the only county that we've run into situations where, you know, the GIS might show one thing, but it's not what's actually out there. And so then what we have to do to build our projects, we have to, you know, as part of getting title insurance, we have to actually cure all the issues. So if there is some mistake in a deed or something, you know, something got missed, or, you know, one of the big things that we run into are gaps between two deeds, you know, where it's not clear actually who owns, you know. So these
Or
are,
an overlay. Somebody
Right.
might both own it.
that.
Not that that happens here, but if it does.
I'm sure, very rare.
Hypothetically.
But that would be something we would have to cure in order to use that area. You know, we would not be able to get title insurance or build our project over something like that. And so typically our practice is, Owen and I, we have to find out ways to cure that. It can be very expensive and very difficult. But, you know, these are issues that come up, and it's why we lease more land than ends up getting used, because, you know, it takes a long time to figure even out what's there, you know. And these are great examples of things that can come up, and a lot of these issues we can solve. There are some that we can't solve, you know. So we can't build. But yeah,
That's my question. I just wanted
it's
to
a great question. No,
Not, if you haven't thought about it, you should definitely add it to your list.
it's already,
Just throwing that out there.
it's on the list. It's on the list.
Anybody else have any questions for?
Sorry, I'll add one last thing too.
Oh.
We're very comfortable once we do like an Alta survey and do all that work. We're very comfortable sharing that with the counties we work in, and sometimes that can be.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, Todd, but I have a comment. It's probably not gonna be a very popular comment, but I think it'll help people understand where I'm coming from, and I'm glad that Daniel mentioned it earlier. I worry about people coming into the county and taking advantage of us because we don't have zoning ordinances. And so I think that's where I'm coming from on a lot of this. I'm 100% behind property rights and being good neighbors and all of that stuff. But I want people to know that when we talk about these things, that's something I'm concerned about, because we know that it has happened. And so if I seem like a jerk or I make comments that people maybe don't like, that is one of the things that I'm constantly thinking. And I'm not saying that you guys, that's just a
I
general
appreciate it.
statement.
I'm on the same side as Daniel.
I would
Not
say,
that a lot of people are very passionate about our county, and so we just need to remember that.
I applaud that, and, you know, I applaud, you know, or create an ordinance that works for the county. You know, not all development is, done responsibly, and an ordinance that establishes minimum requirements can really help make that happen. So,
What do you think the life expectancy of your project is?
these projects are built to be to produce power for a while. The panel's warranty these days are 30 years. So that's a good get. It depends on the power buyer, how long they want the power for, but it's pretty rare to sign a power purchase agreement, the deal to sell the contract for less than 15 years, and I would say 20 to 30, 35 years is very common. And what that does is, all the costs in these projects is before they're built and end while they're being built. Once they're up and running, it costs, relatively little to keep there. They just sit there and produce power. And, the panels being warranty for that long, means that they're valuable for that long, produce enough power for that long. And then the longer the contract, the more the price is locked in and the cheaper the power we sell. So that's the whole reason our business works, is that it's some of the cheapest power in the market, and there's a really significant need for power of any kind in Indiana. There's a huge shortfall coming, and so they need generation, they need it, built in the state, and so that's where we fit in.
Marcia, do you have anything? David? No. Lori? Anyone else?
I've got more questions, but now it's not.
Well, they can come back later.
There's one in the audience back here.
Yes.
Hi. So I own a tax police, and I have clients from New Mexico to Texas, Naples, up to Pennsylvania, and back across. When people tell me stories of solar panels out west, particularly New Mexico and that area, they say when birds fly over these things, they drop dead.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, that's why I'm here tonight, is to ask, besides the setbacks and the surveys, what are these things gonna have as far as an impact on our environment, our wildlife? Our turkeys, we do have some bald eagles around here. Is that going to hurt our environment?
Great question. It's a great question. Out west, there's a different kind of solar farm. Blank on the name of it. It's basically it's not the PV panels that you see people put on their roofs and that we're all familiar with. It's basically concentric circles of mirrors that reflect the hot sun out there and directed at a tower that holds a steam generator, from what I understand. And the concentrated light creates heat, creates steam that then creates power. And those kinds of solar projects, I think, can hurt birds. We are not exploring that, and it's a good thing to add into an ordinance, is to require these to be PV solar projects, which are the kind that flip up panel that we're all familiar with, and that don't do that exactly. And so, on other environmental concerns, these are questions we can, certainly work on in the ordinance. It's our practice to, the fencing we use on our projects, we call it wildlife fencing. It's, wooden posts with, wire mesh so that little animals that go in can come out. There's full-time employees too, so, typically the fences run from between 6 and 8 feet is what we mostly see, counties require. The deer can jump over that, can't get out. There's full-time employees that can help with that. But we plant the site, under all the panels is, seeded even before construction. That can be, again, that's something we want to work with the county and Purdue Extension on, because they'll know best kind of what works for the county. But, we love to try to establish pollinator habitat. Several of our projects, we graze sheep in among the panels, we want these to be a benefit to the, wildlife in the area, for sure.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions for Colin and Owen. Nice to see you guys again. I think she brought up an excellent point in my question. I really got three of them. First, EMFs. Are there any electromagnetic frequencies, any leakage that's produced by these PVs? I don't know, so I'm just asking you, throwing it out there. The second thing is in Indiana, the data centers that are being created to generate electricity for AI and the water that they use is really important. I think it was Kevin that mentioned the karstography, and I don't know if you're familiar with that and you know what's going on in Irvington, Kentucky. We're all just terrified of losing our water, and that's being a really big thing in the state right now. And then my third question is, I heard you say in the meeting earlier this morning that you always make sure that whatever you do can be undone, that at the end of the project 30 years from now, that you're going to remove everything and restore it to the way it was before. My question is, how is that funded? Is there some sort of bond that we can make sure that politicians can't touch and get at so that that is paid for in advance and we're not left as taxpayers holding that bill and handing it to my great-grandchildren?
Totally. All right, I guess now.
I can answer the last question. The bond will be written into the agreement. There will be a.
Excellent. Yeah, we want to make sure that our kids and grandkids are protected because we're all trying really hard to get our houses paid off and have something to leave them before inflation makes our kids live in
Understood, yeah, decommissioning bond, as Commissioner mentioned, push report decommissioning plan, designing these so that, they can be removed and the ground is protected. These are all crucial parts of what you just said. As you might imagine, landowners also wrote a lot of these protections in their own contracts because they have the same concerns about their land.
electromagnetic fields.
Oh yeah, EMS. They don't exist. I mean, it's the same technology that's on rooftops and that you see that have been around for 40 years. I don't know.
Well, using one of those tri-meters, I made sure that I didn't get a smart meter on my house in my old suburban house back in Fishers, so I kept an analog meter. There's concern about those that actually catch on fire. They caught entire neighborhoods on fire in Pennsylvania and California. That's documented. But you mentioned we wouldn't have any battery storage facilities, and my understanding is it's actually the batteries that are more likely to have EMFs. People are measuring those in their Teslas.
The panels are low voltage. They don't emit much. I've never heard. So water should reduce water use to the area. Typically uses less than farming uses now. Some of this water is used to hose off the panels. It's really not used for much else.
Are you collecting or storing groundwater and recycling it?
We'd have to work that out either, through existing wells. Sometimes, we've had to truck in water. There's different deals, but it's not a huge requirement. Every project that we've has had some local facility that's been able to accommodate it. It's not a data center. It's meant to be out there, withstand the elements, and
Will a data center potentially be one of your clients? And if so, how close would it be?
Excuse me, I don't mean to be rude, but it's getting pretty late here. If you have questions for these gentlemen, you can talk to
Just wanted to
them.
get it on the public record so people could actually see it that didn't have the opportunity.
There'll be plenty of opportunity, I'm sure, in the future. We've got 2 years. Hopefully it won't take that long. Hopefully we can get something done 6 to 9 months on the solar ordinance and move on. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Kevin. Is there a second? Second by Andrew. All in favor say aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.